Organic This and That, written and read by Mike Hayes. I sort of enjoyed my visits to Aunt Mary's. Life had not been kind to her, widowed at 52 because of a tractor accident that should never have happened. She was different somehow, quite unlike my other aunts, on both sides, all comfortably off and totally dissatisfied with their lot, and of a sharp tongue and ample word stock to leave any listener in no doubt. In my early years of visiting Aunt Mary, it was more her two parrots that I was taken with, and content to let my mum and her do the conversing. One bird almost totally green, the other slightly larger and with a multicolored plumage more typical of the specimens in my books. But neither of them talked. Auntie's excuse, defense, for this was that because there were two of them, they had no need to learn a second language. I believed it at the time, but as the years went by, I became a little suspicious. But I never lost faith in the cage arrangement, which I believed unique. Not for Aunt Mary was it to be a cage on a stand. Uncle Tom, not long before he died, modified the parrot's place of residence. He was not entirely thinking in improving the bird's lot, far from it. He couldn't cope with the two feathered aliens flying about the living room while his wife was cleaning out and reordering their single cage. A job not to be taken lightly, and for Thomas, a blot and blight on his Friday night. His solution had been to purchase another identical cage and to join it to the existing one by a 2-foot corridor of inch-square netting wire. Two well-standing pieces of plywood shaped like table tennis bats could be inserted either end of the corridor to isolate the birds, one to a cage or both in either cage. Parrots by nature are inquisitive, and at the very first time of asking, they beaked and clawed their way along the corridor, and I swear to it, inspected their new extension. Thereafter, it was the usual thing that the multicolored would make the first move, be followed closely by Greenie. But, and it intrigued me, sometimes they'd spend some time alone in either cage. At the time, it made me think. I like to think of them deep in thought. Just what do parrots think about? Well, all animals actually, if at all. Are their thought processes like ours? Do they learn and forget, like me? Auntie's birds had been born into captivity, never known or experienced freedom as their ancestors had. Can you miss something you've never had? I tend to err on the side of no. Their cage and corridor protected them from predators. Next door's very willful cat was the nearest, but it was never more than a watching brief. So no predators, and no foraging, and just minor competition from a cellmate. I cannot ever remember empty seed hoppers in those cages, but neither can I remember them refusing slices of apple pear and the like when fingered through the bars of their little domain. Fresh water every day, not fecally tainted by beasts of the wild type, never cold, even with central heating. Farming stock are tougher than that, and it takes a lot of digging and pipe work to install. Across lots of fields, the only thing that seemed to disturb them was the switching on of the television with its warm-up crackle and flashing lights. I wondered if they knew they'd been born into captivity. In the dark recesses of their minds, I willingly gave them the human ability to think deeply. Were they able to process information? There was increasing evidence that some higher orders of monkeys and apes do process information and solve puzzles, particularly if there was a reward system in place. Did either or both of these captives ever think tried to unlock that cage door. They didn't hear keyed or code. On balance, it can't be all that bad living in a cage all your life. Auntie's parrots were living proof of that, despite what many actually of my school friends thought about cage birds and those with a certain freedom, but still for the gratification of superior humans. But some of my friends were so intense about such things, it made me feel bad about myself and family. But we were farmers. Not a huge acreage needing combine harvesters or any of that enormous hardware now available to landowners providing much of the nation's foodstuffs. My dad, Thomas's young brother, had just managed to keep the family farm afloat. Contradiction in terms, but records show the Morrisons had been farming here since 1823 with strict male lineage and heredity. It just added to my angst. I was the only boy. I had one sister and 3 girl cousins, and I didn't want to be a farmer. Not, I might add, because of the responsibility of such a concern. I wanted to travel, to see the world, not be tied to the seasons, the clock, not to have the weather my main adversary. There were other issues, of course, some of which, although not in the control of the farmer and very hard to manage, that upset me. There is no order of priority to me. My mind, my ideas, they were all of the same magnitude. I'll start with bovine tuberculosis. Between the testing and getting the results, my father hardly slept, was markedly silent to one and all, withdrawn, sometimes irritable, with all of us. Somehow he escaped the foot and mouth emergency, distance and isolation, I presume, but have lasting, disturbing mental recall of the TV pictures of the bovine bonfires. One has to have such faith and resilience to start all over again. It's not just a matter of money. But if it's all one knows, has experience of, there's so little choice. Events of that magnitude position the minor damage done by irresponsible adults and their wayward dogs. There was little comfort to be gained having to shoot a healthy adult cow or steer with a broken limb. But it was not a total loss. It's what slaughtermen do every day. But while the beast was alive, it had a lasting potential. Which brings me to my next point. Father managed 2 herds. The farm's acreage was enough to support a herd of 60 to 70 adult cows. Well-drained soil, good grass growth, secure boundaries. For financial flow, ready money for paying the bills, he had a well-established herd of Holsteins and always half a dozen or so Friesians. Big, lumbering, awkward, docile milk machines, lovingly cared for by a succession of bulls from neighbouring farms. Dad kept accurate records. The weakness in the system was that for milk, one needs calves. Healthy female calves were welcome, one day to replace their mother. Male calves, down our way called bobby calves, were of little value. Most had very short lives, and it disturbed me. Some of the better specimens were sent abroad, but there was no Miriam and Moses endpoint. I was ever grateful to the French for their love of veal. Oh, unless I forget, there was a pack of hunting foxhounds just 20 miles away, always hungry. But father had also addressed more modern methods of farming. Within walking distance of our house, there were 2 enormous dull grey metal sheds open to the air at both ends. A great deal of metalware meant stalls for up to 48 beasts, 4 identical rows on solid concrete bases. The sheds, most of the time, housed 36 beef cattle, mainly Herefords, but with the occasional stranger. The empty fourth line was for emergency use, as and when. These animals did not graze, for yet what was put in front of them through restricting metal hoops. They didn't slurp water from a brook or pond. They drank the same water that gushed from the house taps. They came as calves, all male, and left before their second birthday. If you eat beef and buy it over the counter, you may have eaten bits of one of Dad's Herefords. To the unsuspecting, it might look so clean, so efficient. But no, to manage their feed, Father had to have 2 silage pits, ugly, smelly blots on the landscape, and what went in had to come out, minus, of course, the bits that had been added to the beast's weight and profitability. Slurry, which had to be channeled away to a place of rest. Father, with some help from my mum, would feed, brush, hose down their bovines in situ for 18 to 20 months. Then one day, 2 or 3 great big transporters would take them away. Dad would wash, disinfect the empty stalls, and in a week or two, the same transporters would deliver up to 36 young, fit, healthy newcomers to be brought on. Unnatural cycles of nature. I could not identify with it at all. If my parents were upset about it, it didn't show. Sometimes Dad would say, "Boy, work hard at your studies, make something of yourself in life." Perhaps he was just being polite. In my mind, those bovines were no better off than Auntie's parrots. No predators, balanced diet, clean water, captives. Not as nature intended. To my mind, as artificial as organic produce. I am very familiar, well versed in chemically defined media for the growth in pure culture of microorganisms. It also includes the rigid control of the physical environment, temperature, oxygen tension in plus and minus modes. It's what microbiologists, bacteriologists, and certain others do for a living. But I still have real problems about the scaling up required for so-called organic produce. Furthermore, I question the space, time, care, and technology required to provide fodder for millions of people on a year-round, economically sound basis, fairly and regularly. In addition, I am still struggling with concept. I ask myself, why bother? What's so bad about the way we've done things for centuries? In extremis, I see the disappearance of green fields open to wind and weather, and the billowing canopies of canvas-like material, impervious to water, gas, and airborne detritus of man and nature's other essential behavior. Close your eyes and recall the Millennium Dome. But not just one, everywhere, allowing, of course, for the built environment of a civilized society, and importantly, all the ancillary equipment and technology to replace nature. To start with, not for us the tedious burying of seeds from a previous generation, with whatever faults it may have had. Oh no, we are going to start with tissue cultures of proven strains, nurtured on the best there is in life for the growth of young plants. Tailored scaffolds of sterile, reusable, inert material would support the development and specialization of our desired crop. Don't want our green stuff, intended to nourish, subverted by stems and stalks to be thrown away. In this way, the product would be identical in all ways and cut out the choice mechanism by potential purchasers that leads to so much waste. Such careful choice of donor cells should reduce disease and waste of produce. So what about the needs? For example, water requirements. In the laboratory, we use sterile distilled water, sometimes triple distilled water. Now, we don't want our crops exposed to rainwater contaminated by whatever is washed out of the atmosphere, as happens at present. Distillation requires heat and water, a great deal actually. Plants need light for photosynthesis, not light overall, but certain wavelengths, and from time immemorial, they have coped well enough, even allowing for the fact that some wavelengths, for example, ultraviolet light, is mutagenic. So for our inside crop, we need a light source, filtered to remove harmful rays. We have the technology, but at cost, particularly if in the interest of faster crop growth and rotation. So we keep our filtered light on 24 hours a day. During photosynthesis, plants fix carbon dioxide, plentiful in our atmosphere, at present a major part of the planet's problem. But our atmosphere is becoming increasingly more polluted with a range of chemical and physical particles. Fortunately, we have the technology to fine filter air, at cost, of course, so providing clean air of appropriate gaseous ratios is a requirement and is possible. We can do it. This brings me to the predator competitor fringe. Surely in developed countries we have the knowledge and technology to protect our crops. Cannot bear to think of my organic kale being eaten by marauding rabbits or any other species that Noah saved. Man the master sort of thing. We would, of course, insist that the humans in attendance on our crops would have passed through 3 air brakes with appropriate change of garb before going on duty. Don't want humans contaminating our harvest. And of course, we're going to keep the light, heating, essential mists and sprays, etc. on for a full 24 hours a day. So need a shift system of appropriate staff, a boost to employment opportunities. So we, the producers with the technology, have done our bit. Bountiful harvests without artificial growth promoters and no crop spraying. But there has to be a profit. Now all we have to do is to get it to market. All our effort and good work is going to waste, but we're going to fix it one day. We'll harvest our organic crop aseptically, vacuum pack it in situ, transport it to the markets and superstores in temperature-controlled, humidity-monitored vehicles, and have it sold by folk who will have been trained and kitted out as laboratory or theatre technicians, so as to preserve the taste, texture, look, and aroma of our produce. We, the experts, intend to run 24-hour online seminars on how best to handle, prepare, cook, process our store or food. After all, the nation's health is on the line. Your homework: imagine the scene: an expert cook with a cauliflower ordinaire and a hopeless cook with an organically grown cauliflower, all other things being equal. Who wins and why?